Hey folks, today I'm bringing you another fun little video, and this time we've got Mrs. Claus.
Hey, why don't you shower more often? I don't like it, it's bad for my skin.
Anyway, let's do it. Hey guys, this is a really fun project, but if you'd like to see more of these with more in-depth kind of anatomy and descriptions of what's going on, check out my online school. It's really helpful for those of you who are trying to avoid the mistakes that carvers often make. So check that out and the link below. Thanks. All right, so to start this project, you can see I've got a little pencil mark on there that I don't want, so I'm going to clean that off. That's from when I was blocking this thing, cutting this thing out on the bandsaw. All right, so we've got a pretty small piece of wood. This is a remnant from a 2x2 block. It's 3 inches tall, and it's about, let's see, inch and 2 inches and 3/8 wide from corner to corner, and about an inch and a half wide. The reason why this is no longer a 2x2, I did cut it from a 2x2, but the 2x2 wasn't square, and this was the small side, so maybe that tells you about me, but that's okay. It is what it is, right? You get what you get. So to start this one out, just wanted to go over the tools I'm using. Just a tape measure, a really nice little Helvy knife, but I did this really fun little elf here with just a detail knife. So if you have an old detail knife or something small, that'll still work. This is about 1 1/4 inches. This knife I think is about, I can't remember, 1 3/8 inches. Let's fact check, per usual. I can never remember what the length is on this thing. Yep, about 1 inch, and this is the dumb side. Yeah, about 1 3/8 inches. So, cutting edge on there. I like a shorter blade, gives me a little bit more control. So, to start, I want to create a stop cut about 1 inch from the top. So I'm going to grab my little handy dandy tape measure here, mark it with my hand. Alright, so we're going to do kind of not a straight line across, but like a V type situation. So it's going to come down, like so. I want to create this little curl of hair, comes over here, right? Because Mrs. Claus, she either had a perm or, man, she has some good genes, because her hair is beautiful. I mean, she's got the hair of a freaking goddess. Anyway, we can draw on her if we want, but it's not going to help us a whole ton. Alright, so I'm going to start with a little bit of a V-cut, like that. Cut in here, turn it upside down and get this other side. Beautiful. And then just a relief cut. This is what's known as a stop cut. This first cut I'm doing, putting the knife in, straight in, right? Being very careful here. I should say, before we get any further, wear a glove. If you don't have a glove, make a thumb guard, right? One of the commenters on my last video said that. It's a great idea. Now, the reason I'm not using one is because, you can guess it, say it with me, I'm dumb. No, it's just because, maybe that, we'll see at the end of this project, but the real reason is I really just don't like the feeling of the glove, and I'm personally willing to take the risk. I've been carving for 16 years now, so I can do that. I can take those risks. You better believe I started out with a nice Kevlar glove, and you better believe that I give Kevlar gloves to people and suggest that they use them when they're whittling. I also want to say, I don't want to come off as some expert whittler. I'm not an expert whittler. I'm a wood carver, right? So what I'm doing is, here, I'll show you. These are my tools. I'm used to using these full-size chisels. This is not my tool strong suit here. So I do want you to keep that in mind. Some folks in the last video made some comments about my knife skills. Yeah, definitely not the best given. I'm with you there. But, I do love to carve, and I find that these little tiny projects are just so rewarding. So anyway, you can see here, I've gone pretty deep, maybe, I don't know, 1/4 inch. I might just take it a little bit deeper. I want her to have a nice deep cut here, just because I want to have enough room to kind of round this hat over and not ruin it, not get rid of it. Okay, so there's this. So all in all, I'm probably getting close to a 1/2 inch at the deepest part here of this first cut. Okay, moving on. I'm going to create her forehead, and I want to come just about from the top peak of that little hairline down. I'm going to come about, let's say 5/8 of an inch down. Okay, 5/8 of an inch down, maybe just a tad higher, something along those lines. Oh, and start her brow. Just gonna take a little cut there. Actually, scratch that. Let's go with the nose. Let's do the nose. The nose is going to be about, let's say, an inch, and let's say about an inch. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure inch and let's go inch and an eighth down. So from the top of this peak, an inch and an eighth down. That's going to give us our nose. Yeah, that seems a little low to me too, but that's what we got. That's going to be her nose, right? Because the bottom of her chin is going to be here. So it seems a little weird. Seems a little low, but it's okay. Make a little stop cut. Shallow here. Don't want to go too deep, okay? But I want it to be noticeable. Another stop and relief cut. Okay. So now we've got that. I might just take her nose and extend it, make it a little bit shorter. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, you know what? An inch and an eighth. Nah, we'll stick with it. We'll stick with it. You're probably saying to yourself, Alec, I thought you said you've done this for 16 years. Why are you so all over the place? Well, I usually don't measure. So I'm actually trying to take measurements from other carvings around me to try and figure out what on earth is this thing going to be in terms of width. All right, so I'm taking that down. This is that eye line. Just a review from the top here. I went about 5/8 of an inch from the top of this corner to this line. So to review, 5/8 of an inch from here to here, and then what was this? See, I've already forgotten. An inch and 3/8. An inch and 3/8 from this peak to the nose. Okay, so there's a little bit to keep track of here, but it's just measurements, and you can rewatch this over again if you need to. I'm going to try to take it nice and slow. So I hope that you're carving along. All right, so it's at this point that I want to start dealing with the kind of top of the head a little, or at least just getting kind of the round shape. Now, Mrs. Santa Claus has this sort of shower cap looking, kind of frizzy looking, I guess it's more of a, what is that design, that crochet, not crochet, anyway, it doesn't matter. It's kind of like a frilly looking brim to the shower cap type hat. It's red and kind of awkward looking, but it's kind of the most commonly portrayed version of Mrs. Claus. I don't know, you could put a Christmas hat like this guy. You could do like the Santa Claus type hat on him if you wanted, or her if you wanted. I just don't know. I like the differentiation. So I'm going to have a red kind of bonnet with a little fuzzy kind of, what is that called? See, my sewing terms are not there, folks. I admit it, okay? I don't remember a lot of my mom's sewing terms, okay? Fight me. I'm going to take the edges off of this because they're digging in my hand, and oof, it hurts. Just take the edges off of this block because it's not nice to touch with really sharp edges. This just takes a couple of seconds, so... Oh, I got kind of heavy with that cut. Don't do that. Don't do that. Alright. Alright, so... Piping, that's what it's called. Piping. My mom was a seamstress. Piping is a really specific term used to describe I think it's the material that you sew to the end of a seam to make it look fancier. So the seam of her hat it's like ruffled, and then it has this piping that is that's the best I can do to describe it. It's just this sort of like design, right? I'm a dude. I'm not well versed in the sewing. I probably should be more knowledgeable about it because it's really cool. I think it's awesome when a dude knows how to be able to sew something together. That's pretty cool. Anyway, I'm just rounding the top of her head off, right? Like so. So I really like these pull cuts. I like pull cuts because you have a lot of power in your pull. You also have a good amount of push power. But these are less safe cuts, for me at least. I might be a rarity here, but I feel like more likely to slip into my finger. This way I've got a range of motion, right? And as long as I'm using the leverage between my thumb and my finger, and the thumb is always out of the path. See, this is the position of my thumb. I'm using my thumb to push, and there's no slippage, because my thumb is always anchoring here. Otherwise, I could hit my other hand if there was no thumb anchor. It's just a word on safety. Some people raised up that question in the last video. I just thought I would mention it. So, see how that starting to get all kind of bonnet-y? Now sometimes if I've got a bunch of material I'm removing, I like to use my big, I don't know what this is called. This is a Hawken. I call this a Hawken cut. Remove a lot of material quickly. I love this cut where you just kind of, ooh. Yeah, obviously I have no idea what that cut is actually called, but I like it. It's a Hawken cut. All right, so we've got the hat kind of rounded a little. You know, I honestly think we could take it back a little bit more. I'm going to come just a little above, maybe half an inch from the top of this little V channel at the brim of the hat, kind of where the hair is. Come just above it, and yeah, like I said, about a half an inch, and take a little bit out of the top here. Now the whole point of this is to get that frilly stuff I've been trying to name for the past 10 minutes. I want to get that frilly stuff so that this border stands out a little bit higher. It's kind of similar to what we're talking about here, how this stands out a little bit. This little, whatever, the band of the hat. Okay, so I want to kind of bring that back. And also she has this flippy hair that comes out, so I need to bring this back if I want her flippy hair up here to come forward. Okay. Cool. All right. Now, if you want to have a little reference photo in front of you, I think it's a good idea. I don't have a reference photo. I just have a little drawing that I made, kind of rough. It's embarrassing, but just a quick little drawing of kind of the direction I'm headed. It doesn't need to be perfect. I like to have a little drawing nearby. You could have a picture of the Santa Lily. The drawing is nice because it helps me to simplify the shapes, and that way I don't have to stress out as much about all the little intricacies of Mrs. Santa Claus. I'm going to take some little grooves out of her hat because her bonnet is kind of scrunched up on the top, and it's depressed in little areas, and not sad, just depressed. Like, you know what I mean? You know, a little groove, I guess. I'm sure her hat is plenty happy. All right. Reminds me of a friend of mine saying, "Alec, don't you say that your carvings often speak to you? Wouldn't they just be saying, ah?" That's one of my favorite wood carving jokes. You know, you talk about this artsy-fartsy stuff, how when you make something that the piece just speaks to you in a way, you know. It's very artsy. And they said it wouldn't, if it spoke to you, wouldn't it just be saying, "Ah! Stop cutting me!" I love that so much. Alright, now I'm doing something kind of funky. Granted, I'm taking this little edge of the hat and turning it up. Now, why, you ask? Well, I'm kind of fooling you. This isn't really the hat. This is actually the hair coming down. And in fact, I regret going so high. I'm going to go a little lower. Her hair is going to come like so, and then up. All right? And that's okay. We can turn this into a curl, the first line that we made. The point is, I'm taking this brim, this little kind of V-cut that I made, and taking the bottom and curling it up a little to make the curls of her hair nice and low, almost below the eye line on, or at or below, right? And it's okay if they're not perfectly even. I say now, after seeing they're not perfectly even. But really, it is okay because hair doesn't necessarily have to be perfectly proportional. One curl might sit higher than the other. Isn't that convenient, right? Okay, now I don't want to remove all this material from the sides of her face because she's going to have lots of curls. I do, however, want to take some of the chunkiness out of the base of this, the squareness of it. So I'll do that. And I'll take the corner out of her chin. Yeah, a little bit more roundness happening. Mrs. Santa Claus. What the heck are you up to lately, Mrs. Santy? Mrs. Claus. What is Santa Claus's wife's first name? His is Chris, right? We got Kris Kringle. Krista Kringle? Don't worry, I will not be here all night. I'll be leaving pretty soon here. This is not a long project, at least by my standards. Long for me is days, weeks, years. This is like an hour or something along those lines. So this is a pretty quick carving for me. And if you don't have an hour to sit down and whittle something, maybe you need to simplify your life a little more. Wow, that got deep. Sorry, I didn't mean to accuse you. So this is the forehead, right? This is our brow ridge. Old Mrs. Claus here, Krista Claus. Maybe that's what I'll call this video, Krista Claus. Her brow ridge is there. She's got a little crumply hat up top. And we started to take some out of the bottom of her face, right? Well, then let's address the elephant in the room. Where's this hair going to end and her face start? Well, I'm just going to go up, about from the bottom, a 1/4 of an inch, right? Something like that. And make a little stop cut. You see that? Stop cut in. Straight in. And then relieve. Gotta go a little deeper. There we go. Just like that. That's going to be where the curl ends on this side. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. They don't have to line up. They don't have to be exactly perfect. This one could be a little higher because the hair is just kind of organic and flows and falls, and it doesn't have to be exactly the same on one side. Really, hair is kind of fun for that reason. You can kind of play with it once you get the basic ideas of how to carve it, which is the real trick of it. I'm not saying that part is easy. Boy, it's taken me a few years to really understand how to do hair properly. And even now, I question it. I don't know if I even know how to do it properly today. I really don't. So, one quick note. I remeasured the hat and the relationship to this little peak here, and it's actually about 1 inch. Maybe I said that already. I don't know. I think maybe I stated that it was like 1 1/4 inches down to the peak, or I have 1 inch. Yeah, just about 1 1/4 inches. Well, I'm going to take that peak up a little higher. And that won't affect too much here, thankfully, because I'm just taking that very peak and taking it up a little higher. Her hairline's a little too low. Okay, just that little chunk out. That way, the top of this peak to the top of her head is 1 inch. Okay, and we'll fact check that, make sure that's good. Yep, pretty dang close. Good enough for the girls we go with, as I always say. That's a rude saying. Actually, you shouldn't use that. Okay, now we can measure from here down and make any corrections that we need to. So do not fear, just a couple corrections are near. All right, so from the nose to the peak of this head is still just about 1.25 inches. 1.25 inches. So let's see how we're doing there. 1.25 inches. So we'll just hike the nose up a little more. I knew her nose looked long. Didn't you think that? Didn't you think that? I thought so too. It's too long. So that's a cuter button nose. She's already looking cuter. Sorry, miss. Your rhinoplasty was delayed because of my stupidity. Alright. So, reviewing. Sorry for that little few-minute misstep. We got 1 inch from the top of the head to the little widow's peak, or I guess reverse widow's peak. This little, meeting point of the V here. Where her hair separates. And then just about from here to the nose is 1.25 inches, if I'm not mistaken. I have a great short-term memory. I don't know if you know this. 1 inch and 1/8 from the hat or hairline, this little V, to the nose. 1 inch and 1/8. Sorry for those of you who are used to metric. And then from the nose down is about 7/8. Okay? 1 inch and 1/8. So that means from the bottom of the nose to the top of the head is 2 inches and 1/8 inch. 2 inches plus 1/8. So 2 1/8. And then from the nose down is about 7/8. Are we good on that? Sorry if that was a little bit of a misstep. I got rushing a little. That's a good thing to note. Try not to rush. Nothing wrong with being Russian, but there is a problem with rushing your carving. Okay, so we got our nice little brow ridge. We got our hair coming in. I want to kind of design the hair, the meeting place to the face. And she's got these cute little curlicues. She's got her little perm going. I'm going to make sure that the meeting line, is not too straight. So you see how I'm making these indentations with the knife, like so. Little curls. Another one here. And yeah, this is a beginner-friendly project, but it's towards the side of advanced beginners. So people maybe who have done some whittling in the past, some simple projects. It's something that you can do if you're kind of starting out. And of course, on the online school that I have, you're going to see a lot more advanced stuff than this. This is more suited towards those who are starting out. But of course, on the school, there are videos that are more geared toward people who are advanced. They've done some of the simple whittles and they want to learn more about the structure of the face and anatomy and all this stuff. And in these ones, we're just kind of making a cute little carving. That's our main goal, just having fun. Which we're having fun in the other ones too. Alright, so I should tell you exactly what I'm doing here. I'm making a stop cut, right? I made this stop cut, and now I'm making a relief cut to that line. Okay? I'm not removing a lot of material, but I'm just kind of coming down and making a little contrast point between the curlicue hair, these little lines, and her cute little grandma face, right? Because Mrs. Claus, she's pretty old, I mean, she's still got, don't get me wrong, she's still got it. She's a cutie, but she's pretty old. So I don't know. She's at least in her 70s or 80s, or for all I know, she's 600 or 700 years old. I mean, Santa's been around for a long time, right? Wasn't he a saint or something? I don't know. You're not here for a history lesson. Thank God. Thank God. This would be embarrassing. I don't know where Santa came into the picture and when Santa met Krista Claus, as I've now called her. Okay, so again, now you can see that her little hair is coming out, and it's kind of looks like she's wearing some 60s hairstyle, because not all of this is defined yet. And we'll see how it goes. I'm not holding my breath. Maybe you are. But I haven't kind of sorted all this stuff out yet. But I do know that these big curlicues are going to come down, so we can define those now. these biggest curlicues come out from the side of that V, come on down, right at or below the eye line, and then boop, just pop a little out. Okay? And you know what? I might even just take a little off the side of her head. I want these curlicues to be really... I mean, she may be an older lady, but she's kind of... She's got a full head of hair. She's got the hair of a young beauty. It's, you know, it's white, but it's still vivacious, full of life. She conditions. There's no doubt about that. She's using a good conditioner. I'd actually like to find out what conditioner she's using because it's working for her. She's got a lot of hair. That's very healthy. So keep it up, Santa Claus, Miss Sandy, Miss Krista. So I'm making these little curls. Now I'm coming down. I'm making little grooves and little lines. Okay, so it kind of looks like a step right now, but we'll sure those up. The biggest thing here is, look at this. You can see a mistake that I made. Perfect size here. Another little lobe, equidistant from this lobe, right? Same size almost. Look, I started to do that here. I kind of broke it up a little bit. I didn't go all the way back with this lobe, but see, the problem is these are almost the same. And you know, I mean, I guess if she's doing her hair, she might have some symmetry. But if you can mess that up a little bit, it's actually good this one sits a little lower than this one. Because you don't want the, you know, hair is not going to be totally symmetrical. It's just the way it is. I mean, sure, she has a haircut and its length is the same, but when your hair curls, you know, one side's going to be a little lower than the other. That's all. Humans are pattern-making beings, and we don't want to create an inorganic-looking pattern, is all I'm trying to say here. So you want to keep it nice and free-flowing, even for old Miss Krista Kringle, Mrs. Santa Claus. Okay? I'm going to take the hard edges off her hair. I don't want it to be too, you know. You know what? I'm going to cut one of these in half. I wanted to have two little spiral-y curlicues here instead of one big one. That way it looks less like earmuffs and more like curlicues. You know? I like that natural look of hair, you know, when women have the curly hair and they just let it be curly. They don't get the curlers out and try to make two big giant curls. They've, you know. Whoa. Excuse me. I'm sorry, I wasn't talking about you, Krista. You can calm down. You don't have to go anywhere. We're cool. Alright, I digress. Looking good. Her profile's looking good. And we'll talk a little bit about what makes a female as we kind of refine the face more. But what's important now is we sort of get all these forms blocked in, and the next thing I want to do is play with her hair and her hat a little. I want to separate out the hair a little bit from her hat. And this is not going to be totally easy. I'm not going to lie to you and say it's the easiest thing in the world, but it's not going to be too hard either, okay? So her hair comes down, right? We've got her hair. Let me make this darker so you can see it. This pencil's not very dark. And this wood is reflective because of my nice sharp tool. Her hair is going to curl up like so, right? That's her hair. Again, what is her conditioner? Look at that hair. Okay, it curls around. So I want to cut that and separate that out. Maybe it's not quite so bulky on the center. It kind of flattens out. Here, let me erase my it's my eraser. There, now you can see. It's not coming out super high. But then it gets full as it moves out and curls. So let me define that at least to start before we get carried away with anything else. Okay. So that means a stop cut along that line, going straight in along that line, and then a little relief cut down at her hair. Okay, so the hat kind of sits high and back on her hat a little bit. Same thing here, right? Going in, straight in, carve up to that point. I'm going to carve a little bit out of that center part to get that hair set onto her skull a little bit better. See what it did there? A little kind of a V boop, and then boop, then chip that out. Okay, what we're doing is we're distinguishing her hair from her little hat, from her cutie hat. And going straight in with the knife. And I am carving that line. And I want her hat to kind of sit above her hair a little bit. So when I pick which side I'm going to excavate out, I go on the hair side. So I make the stop cut, like that. And then I take my knife in, I take a little chunk out of the hair. And then her hat comes over. See how her hat comes over the hair now? But I'm going to make a switch when it comes to that big curl. That big curl, in most of the pictures I see, her full vivacious hair comes in front of the hat. This is where it's a little bit challenging, right? So now I cut that line in of her hair. And now, what am I removing? The hat. Now I'm removing a little bit of the hat side. So I'm leaving the hair, and I'm taking away the hat. There it is. See that? See what I'm saying? Now this stands away from the hat. Alright, we get it, we get it. Okay, same thing here. Define the curlicue of her biggest presenting hairs. These are almost like her floofy bangs. Carve that line in, and then cut the hat down. Right, so we're taking the hat down, like so. And her curlicues are coming out, guys. That's fun. It's working. It's working. Alright, this is a weird hat. Now, follow me here, okay? Track with me. It's a weird hat. I don't know where she got this hat. I've never seen anyone wear this hat, and I'm frankly pretty glad, because it looks like a shower cap with piping sewn onto it. It's gross looking, alright, if I'm being totally honest. But this is what she wears. Wait, cover her ears while you're saying this. This is what she wears. And it's hideous. We love it. We love it. It's hideous. So cover her ears when you're just talking badly to her like that. It's rude. But this thing kind of like comes up. It like peaks. It's so odd. I don't understand it. I have strong feelings about this hat, and they're not positive, okay? Even though I'm carving it, and your family's going to love it, they're going to think it's so cute, but secretly inside, I don't know if you're like me, but you're going to be like, why did she choose this hat? You're thinking that the whole time, like, man, it's an ugly hat. You could put a different hat on her. It's your choice. I love to hate this hat. Okay? So that's kind of it's kind of my little thing today, my little bit of enjoyment, is I get to carve her hat, and then I get to tease her for it. Having this hat, you know? So, let me have my joy, you can have yours. It makes me feel powerful to make her feel weak. That's my little power dynamic, but I do it to her, not to my friends and family, hopefully. That's the goal. Take all your problems out on your carvings if you can. So I'm making stop and relief cuts, kind of a jag. You see that? See what I'm doing? Creating this kind of jagged line. I've created almost a sawtooth. Well, yeah, that's the piping of her hair. If you look online at these little hats that Mrs. Claus has, it has this like just jagged piping. All right, and that's what we got. That's what we got. All right. Now I'm going to take a little bit away. I'm actually going to make sure that you can tell this is the piping of her hat, kind of like Santa's piping, or whatever you want to call this. The fur stands away from the hat. The paint will help us determine it as well, but I want it to be carved in a little as well. So I'm going to go just above my jagged line, and I'm going to follow it. About, I don't know, I'm going to say 1/4 of an inch to about 1/8 of an inch of little section there, just following. So notice that I'm just following the line that I made there, that zigzag. Not touching the line that I made, coming just above it. And then relieving the material above it. So we're cutting away the hat to make this little zigzag pattern. Deep breaths. There's a lot to keep track of here. Take your time. I'm taking my time. Hopefully you're enjoying it. Not stressing out. It's just wood carving. You can throw it out and make a new one. And if people look at her and say, what is that supposed to be? just set her right next to Santa, and you know, no one's gonna judge you. Santa's proud of her. You know what I'm saying? Santa's proud of his wife and her hat decisions. You know, that'll shut people right up. Plus, it gives context. So keep her close to your Mr. Claus. Gosh, this sounds sexist. This does sound sexist. I take it all back. You know, Santa's independent, but so is Mrs. Claus. Mrs. Claus is an independent woman. She doesn't need Kris Kringle to show her who she is or add value to her. All I was saying was, if people don't know what the heck she is, it'll help if you set her next to Santa. Okay, that's all. Okay, see this kind of zigzag pattern that we're getting there? It's kind of funky. We're going to make it look a little bit less square soon. So don't get too worried about the zigzag pattern up here. But you see I'm just coming about 1/8 of an inch at the top of it, going straight in. I could have drawn the line. That might have helped you. But you can still see what I'm after. And this is an extra step. I mean, it's not a super quick step, but I think it's worthwhile. It helps her hat make a lot more sense. I guess. I don't know. I mean, it makes more sense as to how it's a hat, but not why she's wearing it. That we'll never understand. Why she's wearing her painted shower cap. Okay. I forgot to cover her ears. While I was saying that. That's kind of rude. Sorry, Krista. I'm going to push her hat back a little bit more because hat's sitting a little far forward on her head. And it looks like her hat's about to fall into her face. So I'm going to push the whole thing back a little bit by just taking this angle and taking some of this material down. Okay? It's also going to make our piping stand out, our little zigzag. Which when we go back to kind of fur it up a little, soften it up a little, it'll be standing out more and more audacious and tasteless and baffling as to why this hat was chosen. All right. And it's a little poofy. I'm going to take a little bit off the top. Yes, I know that I can't measure from the top of her head anymore now because I cut it down. So I'm going to start measuring from this V point of her hair here, where they meet. If I have to do any more measuring, which I don't have a ton left. We're making good progress actually on this little lady. Her weird little hat is blocked in. Her hair is kind of blocked in. Her brow ridge is blocked in. Her nose is roughly there. At least we know where it's going to be. We accidentally created this low part for the nose, but we'll utilize that. But we're pretending like it's not there, right? We're not too worried about it. Let's get back to the face a little bit. Let's refine that face. It's going to make us a lot happier here. Right now, she looks like a weird version of the Statue of Liberty or something. I don't know what's going on with her. See, these are almost too proportional. These almost look too symmetrical. So I'm going to take this one down a little bit. Like that. When I say it, I mean it. I don't want this to look too even. It's going to look weird. You know, you ever see a girl with perfectly symmetrical left and right side of her hair? It's disturbing. You could tell she did it with a curler. We've been through this, all right? I have strong opinions about women's hair, apparently. I'm just coming to find out. I didn't know I had this in me. Kind of embarrassing, actually. All right. I said I'd get to the face, and I got excited. Back to the face. So I want to take a little bit away from either side of her nose, right? But with a female nose, you generally like to have a straight nose or a scoop nose. But if you watch the Santa video, you see that we're used to that. We did the scoop nose on Santa, so it's not an issue, right? Can you see that? I'm trying to find a focus point here. Yeah, it's kind of curved. So we can do the same thing on her. So we can do that now. We can come in and curve her nose. So we're just taking a little bit. I'll show you the profile, and then I'll use my leg as a background so you don't have to squint to see. Okay, so I'm going to take, there it is, right there. A little scoop out of her nose. See that? There's the profile. See that? Just coming straight in. It's hard to do, get that angle right. Scooping up. Okay, so I want that cute nose kind of come out. Now I'm going to come on either side of the nose with a scoopy doopy. Okay? Little scoopy. Not as much doopy, more scoopy, to be exact. Right, so I'll do the same thing on this side. A little bit out of her nose. Side of her nose. Now there's a little junction point between the bridge of the nose and the forehead. It's called the keystone. Keystone, not to be mistaken for keister. The keystone has to be, not has to be, but generally on a female face, it's going to be a little bit wider where it meets the forehead, as opposed to the male, which is going to be kind of a narrow bridge right in here. Kind of where you, if you have a headache and you kind of squeeze in between your eyes, that's kind of where you're squeezing, that keystone. So there's one distinguishing difference. There are a lot more that we probably won't even be able to talk about in this video because we kind of have to keep moving. But that's one of the big ones. We're going to take the outside corner of her brow ridge and kick it up a little high, a little bit higher, just like that. See that? Yeah. Cute. Looking cute. And I don't want her nose to be too flat, but I also don't want it to be too angled. So I'm not taking a ton away from her forehead, keeping it fairly flat. Not quite like Santa, where I came in deep up in this little meeting point and kind of made his head scoop back a little more aggressively. I want to keep her head a little flatter. Alright. Now I'm going to come, I want to figure out where her mouth is. We got to figure out where her mouth is, right? So let's do that now. Let's try and figure this out. We've got, looks like about 5/8 from the chin. Let's see if that's right. Is that even right, Alec? I think it's closer to a 1/2 inch from the bottom of the chin to the top of the mouth. So from the bottom of the chin to the top of the mouth, it's about a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to mark it with my finger and then mark it with a pencil. So right about here, about a 1/2 inch from the bottom of the chin, is the mouth. Remember, this whole piece of wood was about 3 inches tall when we started. So now I'm going to create a little V-cut in here, right? Which is just where I come in at the line at an angle, and then I come up and cut a little V chunk out of there. See that? You see what that looks like from the silhouette? Let me see if I can focus a little closer on this. There we go. Nope, not my hand. Don't focus on my hand. There we go. See that little groove in there? That's what I'm talking about. That is what I'm talking about. Alright, so now we've got that groove in there. It's hard to tell when I'm in focus. That's a problem with this camera. That's the spot right there. Okay, so now I'm going to come below the nose and extend that stop cut a little bit. Like so. Here and here. But I have to decide how wide her nose is going to be, right? Because I got to carve the nostril flares. how wide is her nose going to be? I'm going to say about, gosh, about a ½ an inch wide. So let's just take our tape and kind of approximate about a ½ an inch with a pencil. Something like that. I'm going to come in with my knife and go straight in, right on that line. Sometimes I'll leave a little extra meat on the nostril flares just to be sure. Come right on the outside of the line. And I'll cut this out. Okay, so one line straight in, come off at an angle at a 45, cut down into there, and then a relief cut coming underneath. Get the corner of her nose. Boom. This is basically a chip carving cut. You see how that reveals her nose from the side? We'll try that again. This time I'm going to get a little bit closer. Maybe get the focus better. Right there. Okay, straight in. Now I'm going to turn my tool off at an angle, then turn it at a 45. Come in. Boom. Okay, so if I hold her face on the side, there you can see I'm coming in at an angle. Is that clear? Yes, good. Say yes. Good. Okay. And then I'm going to come out from underneath, just like that. Now, notice that when I make a cut, often with my knife, my pointer finger is actually resting on the carving, so that I'm not doing a lot of these freewheeling cuts where the knife can go anywhere it wants. I want to have a safety measure in there, so I use my fingers often, not always. Sometimes I don't. I probably should more than I do, but I try to use my fingers to make a counterbalance for the knife, so I'm not, stabbing myself quite as much. Okay, now you see that on either side of her nose. Got that blocked in. All right. All right, so of course, talking about the lips and the mouth, we can't have her lower lip without defining it, right? And so here's a general kind of rule. The lip is going to be about a third of the way. So let's think about it this way. How about that? Let's from the bottom of the nose to the bottom of the chin, if we divide it into thirds, it gives us a couple of things, right? This first dividing line between the first and second third, this line here, typically going to be the opening of the mouth, right? That's gonna be the opening of the mouth. So what that means is this: from the separation of the second third, let's go ahead and draw this, make this easier, to the third third. So this line, so we got 3 lines. We got 2 lines here, sorry. 1 section, 2, 3 sections. So first, second, and third third. This line between the second and third third is our chin and the bottom of our lip. And it's kind of a cool little double duty cut. So we'll come in with our knife there. And for those of you who are got a little ruler nearby, I'm using this tape measure. Gosh, I'd be much better off with a ruler, but it looks like about, oh boy, I'm going to say about ½ inch. Another ½ inch measurement. Nope, sorry, I lied. I was on the wrong line. See, this can get confusing. Yeah, about, let's see, 5/16. 5/16 from the bottom to the to this chin line here. This is the lowest point of the chin meeting the lower lip, right? It's a little hollow in between the lower lip and the chin. See that from the profile now? How we're starting to get a nice little profile. We got a little mouth showing now. Starting to show at least. There's a whole lot of rules surrounding the mouth and the chin and the nose and all this stuff that we're definitely not going to get into today. Suffice to say, I'm going to take a little bit off of the high point of the chin. Just like that. Okay. Alright. I'm going to come between. I'm going to come right in between the lips and space them out just a little bit more. What I'm doing is I'm catching the lip and just getting that lip. Getting that lip kind of defined a little bit more. There's the sweet spot, the focus point. Sorry folks if I'm kind of hunting around with the carving a little, just trying to find the focus. So that's that. Little groove, kind of opening up the mouth a little bit, giving her the distinct mouth. Coming up over top her upper lip, taking this little corner off here on both sides. Kind of a 45-degree angle here. In this little area right below the nose and underneath the nostril. I can make a little stop cut around the nostril, circling underneath the nose, and then take a little chunk out of the side of this upper lip mound here. Call this the barrel of the mouth for a reason. It's kind of rounded. Okay? So that's looking good. If you really want to get fancy, you can put a little philtrum in there. If you just do a little scoopy-doopy. Talk about the scoopy-doopy a lot. Ready? Ooh, it's kind of a challenge. This is not an easy one. There's your scoopy doopy. Okay, little stop cut up top there. That's your schnottruff, also known as your philtrum. The philtrum is this little groove that comes up into the septum, kind of distinguishes the left and right side of the ball. The nose comes up into there in a lot of cases. Kind of fun factoid for you. Alright, she's starting to shape up. She's starting to look like a little bit like an old lady. So I have this nice pyramid shape in the nose, just naturally from carving it in the corner. That is the beauty of doing these little corner carvings. Now I'm going to do what I would do in any of the other little videos that I've done for the school and for the internet as well. I'm going to carve the bottom of the eyes. Right? Start with the bottom because it's actually kind of an anchor point that I carve the top part to. So I'm going to draw a little half circle as I usually do. Because the goal here is not to make the eye detail, it's to make the mound, the shape of the eye first. So I'm coming underneath, a little half circle. Now this comes below the brow ridge, right? This is the brow ridge up here. You see that shadow. I'm coming just below it, 1/4 of an inch or less. Actually, let's get down in here and say, yeah, 1/4 of an inch. From the brow ridge down, that's the bottom of that circle, 1/4 of an inch down from that brow ridge. Okay. And, yeah, about 1/4 of an inch apart from one another. Let's fact check that. Yeah, just about. Maybe even a little more, maybe even like 3/8 apart from the eyes. Okay, more or less. Somewhere between 1/4 and 3/8. Oh, excuse that. Okay. Alright, now I'm going to take my knife, come on the inside corner. This is a fun cut. Little triangle cut. Ready? One in here. One in here. And then in the inside corner. Boom. Same thing over here. Boom. See this little chunk that came out of the inside corner of the eyes? From this little cut. It's kind of a holdover from a different generation. No, from chip carving. I guess holdover isn't the right word, but it's like it's kind of a technique from chip carving. It's a little triangle, a little pyramid you're creating, right? But you're carving the pyramid into the wood instead of carving it so it's sticking out. So one side here, and then one side here, and that pops the chip out. Again, on the other side. I make it a little deeper on this side. Mistake you can make: don't make these little triangle cuts too close to the bridge, so that she's got no nose bridge. You want to give her some nose bridge. In fact, it's better to start a little wide on these. You can always come in and take your knife and narrow them and scoop around in there and get that, you know what I'm saying, get this kind of narrower later. I like to start a little tiny bit wide. Okay, so back to it. I'm going to cut straight in that line, that little half circle that I made, and the same thing over here. Anchor your hand. Remember, look at my thumb. See how it's kind of anchored in the wood? You're going to cut yourself if you don't anchor your piece. Now, coming underneath, remove a little bit of, just a little wisp of wood from that little line that we drew. We're kind of cutting away that line ultimately. So we drew it on there, and now we're cutting a little V in its path. Do you see what I mean? See how that little V is cut out now? Same thing here. If you had a V tool, you could use it, but again, the point of this is to make it super simple, super easy, fairly easy, right? Easy is relative. So for a beginner, this is a challenge. This is not your easiest possible project, but it's fun to start out with a challenge, but you know. Alright, so the line goes in. Beautiful. I'm going to take a little bit of a chunk out of the side here, almost like I did on the inside corner, like a little triangle. So come up from the brow ridge, following the knife along with the brow ridge, straight down in. Okay, coming over the side of the cheek, and then a little bit out of the eye part. That little pyramid comes right out. See that? Gives it the round of the eye. Same here. With the bridge, continue that bridge, the brow ridge. Sorry, not bridge, ridge. The brow into the cheek area. Just very light pressure, 2 hairs and some airs, Ross would say. Do that. Okay. Okay. Having fun yet? I am. This is Santa. She's starting to get kind of cute. She's kind of cute. I mean, she's, you know, she's not totally done with her face surgery yet, I guess, but she's already looking cute. You're looking fabulous. I'm going to round the chin over, and I'm going to draw a little downward, kind of almost like a frown line, at that bottommost little groove that we created. So coming over, like that. Now I'm going to take that knife and just kind of start to bring the chin down a little and follow that line. Okay? Cool? So I'm just kind of starting to round off this little chin area. And this is where things get a little dangerous because you're awful close to your fingies here. There's not a lot of wood to catch the blade. You do have to be careful. Taking this these saw marks off of her cheek. Don't want her to look like she's been in a I don't know, motorcycle accident or something. My God, this is kind of a graphic carving video. I'm talking about motorcycle accidents and plastic surgery. I just mean that she get, you know, scraped up a little is all I'm saying. You know, when you fall off a motorcycle and you get the road rash. Ugh, I've never had that from a motorcycle, but I've had it from a bicycle, and yeah, let's not talk about it. I apologize. So now I'm just taking a little bit out from in between the nose and the cheek, and it's this transition point. This is what Jeff Ferris calls a smooth transition of form. So I'm not coming in with a V or a stop cut here. You can see I'm just bringing the blade through and just giving it a little curve. Practice that on a piece of wood. If you have an extra piece laying around, practice your scoop cuts. And you'll notice that you can do it on certain pieces and not on others. You know, an end grain, it works great, but with the grain, you have to come on the other side and meet that cut, right? And then clean it up. So that's what I'm trying to do here, is a little scoop cut. Something like that, as Ross would say. Okay, now I'm going to take the edges off of my eyeball, my mound. This is just a mound. I'm just kind of rounding over. Okay. Beautiful. Looking good, Krista. Krista Claus is looking good. Krista Claus. Okay, see how my knife is starting to make like little lines and such? That means it's about time for me to polish this sucker. I'm going to do that and come right back. Alright, so the only reason I'm fast forwarding through this part is the audio went out. And but what I'm explaining here is that the center of the eye mound, if you go down to the edge of the mouth, that gives you the width of the mouth, kind of where the mouth ends. So that was the main point. And then I was also coming in and cleaning up, getting a little more depth on the inside corners of the eyes. Now I'm using the knife with that scoopy cut that I talked about earlier. And yep, here I am. I'm just paring down the chin width. It's a little wide, a little square. So you'll see here that I'm, along with sharpening up kind of some of the hair details with the stop and relief cut, I'm actually just kind of paring down the face, trying to get it a little bit softer, a little rounder. Because, an old grandma, she's not going to have that very sharp, angular jawline. At least most won't, and I don't think Mrs. Claus is. So, yeah. So I'm just kind of cleaning up. I'm also doing a little undercutting practice, which here I'm, kind of showing you what you can do, the difference between a stop cut and an undercut. It's that initial plunge that you make. When you turn the knife inward and make that plunge, you're making a little hollow. So then your relief cut is actually a little bit more, just kind of creates more shadow. Alright, so if you notice anything different, it's because my camera busted. I knocked it over and it wasn't working right. So now I'm using my phone, different camera. Anyway, I thought I'd set these behind me so you could kind of see where it's headed. But returning back to this, we, of course, we did a little voiceover there because our audio went out, but it doesn't matter. Works just as well. Came in here and did all the little curls. I want to narrow the jaw just a tiny bit more. I still think it looks a little square. So I'm going to come in here and just kind of ever so slightly, slowly take little bits away. I mean, it's very possible that you can overdo this. So you don't want to get carried away here, and you want to keep looking at it. You use your eyes. It's kind of like like they say, a good musician. It's not about how well they play, but it's about how well they listen. It's how well they hear. That makes them maybe a bandmate or a good musician. It's like, can you hear yourself in real time? Can you take in what you're doing while you're doing it? And that's a practiced and learned skill. I don't really know if it's totally a gift. I mean, it can be a gift, but I think for a lot of people it can be. But I'm not a naturally super artistic person. I mean, I always liked drawing and painting, and I was always pretty good at it. But I wasn't like Akian or some really talented little kid. So I just learned because I liked it, and I feel like that's how most people are. And that's why I do this, because I love it. That's why I do it as a job. Anyway, I digress. My point was, when you make something out of wood, it's as much about seeing what you've got as it is about knowing how to make it. It's about seeing as much as making, because when you see the right thing, you know what the right cut is. It's starting to sound a little voodoo, isn't it? Like a little opera-y. Alright, so I'm going to kick her nose up just a tiny bit more. I want it to be a little bit cutesier. So I want her nose to kind of come up. She's an old German lady, so she's got that kind of upturned, that kind of cute upturned nose, but it's it's still it's a little aged. So we're gonna try and respect the fact that the nostrils are gonna be a little bit more pronounced. So let's do that since we're here. All right, little tiny bit of a circle. Okay, so I'm gonna come in here with my knife. And notice how I'm coming basically straight in to the side of the nose. And I'm going to come in and then turn either the tool or the knife to make this little nostril. You see what I did there? I just went straight in. Straight in. And now I'm actually going to take the material around the nostril, so atop of the nostril, away with a little slice, following that curve. See how I'm turning the tool? The wood, I mean. If it's easier, you can turn the knife. I find that sometimes it's actually, easier to move the wood when you're holding it. But you got to find out what's comfortable for you. I'm just kind of figuring it out as I go. Again, I'm really not a pro whittler. I'm more of a wood carver. The whittling is knife only. That's what this is. This is kind of something I picked up when I was younger, and then I put it away as soon as I discovered carving with gouges and knives and chisels, all these other tools. And I don't use knives very often anymore, but man, what a welcome reprieve. Reprisal? Man, I don't know. Vocabulary is obviously not my strong suit, right? So anyway, I came back in and I did the same thing to the other side, and I cleaned it up. But that being said, if you're trying to learn about whittling, there's a lot of really great resources online. You can learn. There's Gene Messner. He's somebody who I kind of started to watch out of habit, just not out of habit, just out of love for his videos. I don't know. I watched him as a habit though. Every day I'd watch a lot of his videos as a kid, and then of course much later I ended up meeting Doug online, and yeah, his stuff. I mean, he's prolific. I mean, he's definitely worth. If you're into this sort of thing, he's kind of the guy, on YouTube. There's other guys too. There's Blake Lunsford. I don't know if he's as much on YouTube. I think he is. Pretty sure he is. They have their weekly, or what is it, monthly or weekly meetings. Worth checking out them. That is International Association of Woodcarvers, if I'm not mistaken. You can search that as well. They've got a lot of really great contributors there. They're into whittling as well. They have wood carvers as well, but it's all carving, right? Just your tools. I'm coming underneath the eyes with the knife here. I don't know if it's obvious what I'm doing, but coming underneath the inside corner. A big thing is making sure this inside corner is deep enough, and that's a big problem that a lot of people have. Is they don't take this corner in deep enough. See how that's kind of round? The eyes are kind of round. And gosh, women are admittedly totally different than men, right? Of course, they look different, but they're a different animal, a different kind of thing altogether. I don't mean animal, but they're, you know what I mean, the saying. So yeah, there's a lot of variation in these sort of people, and there's a lot that I just know from experience of carving a lot of women, and I kind of learned like the structural differences. That's actually, part of the reason I started the school, Fundamentals of Woodcarving, which I have linked in the description. It is to show people some of these kind of rules that I learned from great carvers over the years, and just through trial and error of carving a lot of really hideous women. And gosh, I still carve some hideous women at times. So, I wouldn't put it past me. Never put it past yourself. And I'm going to take the corners off of this nose. See how it's kind of square, the bridge? Just going to come in and take those in. So there's a lot here that we're not talking about as far as anatomy and structural differences, simply because we just don't have the time. There's just so much to cover, and we're not going to really do a whole lot of detail here, just kind of get the basic shapes in. But yeah, if you want to learn more about that, the female thing, check that out. That's a good resource. I have a lot more time. I go into depth. And that's honestly, that's kind of the way that I support myself, is through that school. And of course, traveling and teaching carving. It's a great passion of mine. I love teaching. But it's a great thing to be able to do it from home. I'm very blessed in that regard. So, and yeah, I mean, it's that between that and commission work, right? That's kind of the way I'm doing it. So people order a carving, I do it for them, and I don't do these for people. So if you came to me and said, "Hey, Alec, I want you to do a little caricature of my grandpa," I probably wouldn't do it, because I don't really consider myself a whittler. I don't think that's my strong suit. But I love making these little men. These little characters are so much fun. And in my other videos, and in some other videos, I should say, that I created years ago, or months ago rather, I use all sorts of things like spoons and pry bars and railroad spikes, all sorts of things that you shouldn't use to carve. I sharpened them up and made little carvings out of them. So you can check that out as well, just to prove it's not about the tools, it's about the techniques. So, wow, I'm just full of ideas today, aren't I? All right, so I'm just kind of taking the rough edges off. Women have really smooth faces. In fact, it's hard to draw women because everything's kind of subtle, and a pencil makes hard lines, right? And definite shapes. So you're going to see a lot of me just kind of floating around with the knife. Oh, I see a sharp edge on her cheek right there. I'm going to take that down. Just 2 hairs and some hairs worth of material. See how little I just removed? I mean, just like little shavings worth here and there. So that's kind of the main thing here. I'm just trying to go around as I'm chatting with you and take, see, again, hard edges. See, here's one. Gosh, hopefully I'm in the path of the camera. Okay, little angles that I don't need to be there. I also like to open up the brow ridge a little bit, meaning, you know, I take some of that corner off and get that angle lesser, you know, more her brow ridge more like that instead of like a cliff. A man's gonna have a sharper brow ridge like this. See? But you know, this guy is not going to have as much of that. This girl. I'd like to actually see her upper lip move up a little higher. And you say, well, you already cut it in. How are you going to do that? I'll show you. I just take this tool at a 45. And I bring that lip up. And then I pop that sucker out like that. And then I do it like that. Right? So I'm just moving that lip up. And of course, her lips are getting a little bigger, which is fine. Open her lower lip a little bit more. We can do that pretty easily. But first, let's just move that upper lip just a little bit higher. And you know, her mouth could be a little bit pulled apart. You know, you could even put a little gap in there. And if you want to show a little teeth, you can show little teeth. Depends on, you know, how you're feeling, how risky you're feeling. We put that, I hate to say it, we put that fill trim in, that little snot trough in prematurely. So probably going to lose it because I got to bring this mouth mound down a little bit. All right, so I'm just taking a little bit out of this kind of mound in here. Guys, we're really close to the end of this one, believe it or not. These final touches are what's going to really shape her up and make her look like something. With a project like this too, it's not a bad idea to just take a little touch of sandpaper, especially with the women, and just smooth it out a little. You could always add wrinkles back in. And I know this is not a true, you know, a whittler usually isn't trying to use sandpaper, right? Because it's still in your tools. It's not the best. I get that. I understand that. But it's really going to help you out if you're carving women to look a lot more supple. And you need all the help you can get when you're starting out, right? So who knows? I might pull it out. I might pull the sandpaper out. And I'm just taking these frown lines and taking them down a little bit. Her lower lip, here's a little rule I'll teach you, free of charge. That lower lip usually sits further in than the upper lip. And right now, our lower lip is sticking out a little bit more. So that means I'm just going to take the level of the lower lip down, like so. See that? A little bit down. And I'm just making that profile round. See, I'm coming around with the knife and cutting all those little angles. And then stop cut in the middle, opening of the mouth. Kind of handy if you want to make any adjustments to the lips. Your stop cut's always going to be right in the middle of the opening of the lips. Boy, oh boy, her lips are getting full. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Okay. Women also tend to have these more, you know, lips that are a little bit thicker in the center and they kind of fade out a little bit. At least that's the stereotypical thing of, you know, a Caucasian woman's lips. you know. But I think in general, it's just kind of the case that maybe men's lips are not quite as thick in the center, and they taper a little bit less. But thing you can do, a mistake kind of, is, you know, get really aggressive with these frown lines. See, I almost got too aggressive there, and she's going to start to look a little too strong of a face. We don't want hard angles. We want soft everything, right? So just come on in there and take out these hard angles that bump up against the eyes. And I mean, not every woman's going to have super soft features, though. So, you know, if you leave a little edge on there, it's okay. Mine is going to be a little bit softer, probably. Maybe than yours, who knows. Cleaning up around the hair. Okay. Now, we're going to have to conclude this pretty soon because our time has gotten away from us. We're in this pretty deep. Yeah, I guess to conclude, what do we have to do here? Well, we have to carve the eyes. We have to touch it with a little sandpaper. Of course, we have to texture this a little, or at least do something with the zigzag. Maybe a couple little hairs. Let's do the hair. Let's do that right now, because that's easy, right? Just a couple of lines, first of all. I want to make sure this is kind of smoothed out a little bit. Take all the real chatters out of there. All right, I'm just coming in and cleaning stuff up a little more. Getting the flats out of there. You don't want these big flats, right? It's not going to look good. Just get rid of them if you can. Just take these little cuts. You're just kind of, it's just kind of like you're cutting edges off of stuff. You're just kind of rounding everything. If you see an edge, cut it off. Kind of round it over. Okay? Nice. That's okay if there's some fuzzes here and there. Not worried. I'm going to take my knife and just make a little groove, right? Following it along. I can even curl up with it. And then I'm going to follow that, like so, and just cut that little section out. And that's just creating a little movement in the hair. It shows you where the hair is going. I don't want to do a lot of this, actually, believe it or not, because it's easy to overdo. It's easy to overdo the hair. Now I'm going to do a little one into a root. The roots of her hair. Again, a little cut. Don't want to get carried away with these little cuts. Just a few here and there. I'll put one here at the root of her head, like so. Oh, we'll come from the bottom. Cut that one out a little bit more from the bottom. Oh, see that slip? See what happened there? Luckily my finger was not in the way. But man, it's so common. It's so easy to slip. I do it when I'm whittling, because I really am not a big whittler. You know, a lot of times I'm just holding a carving to put the hanger in the back. And I'll actually cut myself doing that if I'm in a rush. So, and a lot of people ask me, you know, how often do you cut yourself? And the reality is pretty infrequently. I do not cut myself a lot. And the reason I don't cut myself a lot is because I usually am very careful to keep my hands out of the path of the tool. Now that's due to the fact that a lot of times I'm using full-size tools where my hand is behind the blade. The whole time. Alright, so I'm coming in. You always want to think, if this tool slips, where is it going to go? Like right now, if this tool slips, it's just going to go into the wood. So I've got all this material blocking in my hand from the knife blade. So you just think about that is all. And that's kind of what safety is. And, you know, the more experience you get with it, the more you get used to it. Undercuts, we talked about that just a few minutes ago. Do that in there, kind of separate these out. Okay. Nice. She's looking pretty cute. She's definitely got feminine vibes. Let's take a bit more out of her chin. Again, a lot of this is just like fine-tuning. I mean, you just got to get used to the fact that not everything is going to come right away. You're going to have to change things around. It's just like anything else creative. You know, it's not like mowing the lawn where you just go and you mow the lawn and then it's done. You know, it's not like going to the grocery store and picking up stuff. It's like it's a thing that you gotta go and experiment with, and then just go, how did I do? And then fix it, and then just keep making changes. It's not a one-time thing, you know. I guess the grocery store wasn't a good analogy, because how often do you have to go to the grocery store? constantly be doing that task. So it's just like that. Just like going to the grocery store. Okay. So I'm just bringing her chin back, right? Because I brought her lower lip in a little more. And now I want to actually bring her chin in. So the best way to do that is to find that little groove below the lip. And that feeds into the chin. Kind of creates the chin. I want her chin not to be super duper strong. I do like a lady with a strongish, you know, a chin that's nice. So there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But you might, you know, you might not make it super angular. I'm actually going to take a little bit more of the weight out of the back side of her cheek, so this area in here. Right? We're going to try and make it a little bit. We don't want to take the roundness out of it, but we just want to make sure that her cheek is nice and it's got an angle to it. You know, it comes up high, down back here. Typically speaking, on the female face, you got that jaw that starts low and then goes up high a little quicker than the male. And you know, on these other ones we worked on, we didn't have to worry about the. We didn't have to worry about the chin. We didn't have to worry about the angle in the mouth and all that. We got to hide it all with that beard. So, you know, that's accounting for why this stuff takes a little bit longer. And plus, you know, the female face is a whole different beast. You know, you really gotta give yourself some slack here when you're doing the female face, because it's a lot of unfamiliar territory. If your thing doesn't look like a female face, you know, you got to make these edits. You can start the video over again and watch it through, if that helps. Whatever it is you need to do. Okay. One thing I like to do is I don't like to make the cheekbones too much wider than the forehead. And again, her jawline is really strong. It comes in. I'm actually going to take it in just to round it out. I want her face to be a little bit rounder. I don't want that squareness. I'm going to take a little bit of that squareness out of her jaw. Again, see, I've done that how many times now? 2 or 3 times I've come back into the jaw and thinned that out. So that's pretty normal. Make these little adjustments. Okay. Now, you might not have perfect proportions here. I'm noticing my left side's a little lower than my right side, but it's just a little ornament, you know? At the end of the day, we're having fun. We're having fun. It's really not the end of the world if she's got a little more on one side or the other. We're not going to sit there all day and be fickle and play with her all, you know, 12 hours of the day. Our waking lives, right? We're just going to have fun with it, whittle it, and call it a day. But that's a nice profile, right? That's pretty nice. I'm going to take and tuck her lip down just a little bit. So I'm actually taking that cut, like so, tucking her lip in, and then taking a little chunk out of the top of her lip, and a little bit out of the bottom. And this is a little grouping in there. Kind of pushes her lips into the face a little bit more. Another way you can do that, I'll show you, is if you come in with a knife. Let's see if I can get the light on there. There it is. The corners of her mouth, and do this little. That's kind of a quicker way. See what it does there? Sets the lips in the face. And then we can tuck that back in. And that's good, because we want the lips to sit in the face. We don't want to carve them on the surface of her face. That's the thing about females that's hard, is really those lips are so important. I mean, there's just, isn't it funny that with the female face, there's so much room, there's so much less room for error. As far as, like, you got to get those lips right. You can carve an ugly man all day long, but to carve somebody's classy as Krista Claus, you really have to pay attention and get those lips right, huh? Okay. Alright, so we got the little grooves on the outside of the lips that set those lips into the face, and I think that made a big difference. Let's carve those eyes. Let's fix that hat, and let's really get close to calling this a day. I keep saying we're close, and we really are. Believe me. Please believe me. We're not too far. A couple more little grooves here and there. Okay. And then you could take a couple more little passes with a knife and create those little grooves in the hair. And you know, you guys could take this a lot further than I am, right? I'm a little constrained on time. I don't want to give this more than an hour or two. While you could sit here and you could play with it for 3 or 4, you know, or set it down and pick it up and work on it for a week. You know, you still got a couple more weeks before Christmas, right? So, you don't want to take too long, because then, you know, you don't want to hang it up right before Christmas. Then your Christmas is gone and then you didn't get to enjoy it. But you know what? There's always next year. That's the beauty of this kind of a thing. Is you could always do this year and have it ready for next year, huh? All right, so here I'm just kind of doing the same thing I did to her hair. I'm just adding the little curls. So I'm just doing these little, you'll see I'm doing these little like little circles, like little half circles. It's like so, right? And see, I'm trying to move my fingers out of the way so that if I slip, I'm not keeping my hands here. I'm gripping it in such a way to where I'm always thinking about the path of that tool. Okay. Little curls. Get her curls going. I'm just taking the edges off. Hair is especially an area where you don't want a lot of edges. You want it to be kind of smooth, right? So this is where you come in and kind of try to smooth your cuts out a little bit if you can, you know. Okay. Yeah, again, there's a lot more to play with here. And to get her hair nice and curly, you're going to have to take a little time. And got that. My main thing here is just getting some little swirls, you know, not going crazy with the detail, right? Because tendency, believe it or not, is for beginners to go overboard and get too detailed with the hair. It's not about the details with the hair. It's about just getting a little illusion, you know, to the hair, right? You don't want to, really, you don't want to go too crazy with it. And, okay, Mrs. Claus. Mrs. Claus, she's a cutie. She's aged well. All right. Let's get those eyes in, huh? This is the important part. Now I'm going to start with the upper lid, as I did with my Santa. And I want her to have some pretty eyes, some nice big pretty eyes. So I'm starting on one side. In fact, let's draw it on so you can see what I'm after here. I like to draw it when I'm teaching, because then, you know, you can see where I'm headed before I'm headed there. And plus, you should be drawing probably at least a little bit on your piece before you do it. That way you can see, oh, do I like the way that's shaped? So what I'm doing is a little almond here. Right? And I'm seeing it, I'm looking at it, I'm like, well, her eyes are a little high. A little high, we could lower them a little. See, this is the stuff that you learn when you draw. When you draw on there. So I'm going to lower her eyes. I'm going to come just below the line that I made there. And a plunge cut. Okay, so I'm coming straight in. See what I'm doing there? I'm going to one side, making that stop cut. Then I came to the other side, just like so, and did the same thing on that side. Okay? Looks like we need to polish our blade. We do that. Okay, we're back with a sharper knife. And now I'm going to cut up to that line that I made on both sides, right? So I'm just taking a tiny bit of material. See my... Oh! Elf overboard! Let's see how he fared. He looks pretty good, actually. He didn't get too knocked around. I think maybe his nose got a little flatter, but... Gotta be careful with that guy. Alright. That's a good sign if you can drop an ornament and it doesn't shatter. There is an argument for a wood carving instead of a glass ornament. Alright, so you see what I'm doing? I'm coming in with the tool flat against the face. And I'm just coming in. Okay. Okay, just taking a little bit out of there. You see what's happening here? Me either. That's okay. I'm just taking a little bit out from underneath that line I just cut, okay? And yeah, I'm rounding that mound underneath. So I carved that line, the top part of the little almond. And again, we're probably 1/4 of an inch apart from one another, these eyes. Yeah, in fact, 3/8. 3/8. We've been through this before. About 3/8 apart the eyes are, from the inside corner to the other inside corner. And yeah, you probably want to know what the outside width is of the eyes as well. About 1 1/8 from one eye, outside corner of the eye, to the other outside corner, 1 1/8. Again, sorry about those of you who are using metric. You might want to have your handy dandy conversion app or chart open. I'm going to get this out of the view here. Okay. And occasionally you can do some scraping. But the point here is I want to get that upper lid cut in. Okay. Like so. And just look at them at all different angles. Like a lot of times I like to turn them like this. Shows you a lot. Shows you that this side is lower than this side. What does that mean? Take a little bit more out of this side. All stuff you learn from turning the thing around. Okay. Man, it took me like 12 years of carving or longer before I realized the simple idea that if you just take a step back from your carving and look at it from a distance, you see all kinds of problems with it. Hey, my elf just wants to escape. Santa's, and his nose is getting flatter. It's such I gotta get him closer to the inside of this tier stool. Anyway, what was I saying? I don't even remember now. Must not have been too important. Oh yeah, take a look at a distance. It shows you a lot of problems. Okay. Let's scoot this up a little bit closer. Cool, cool. All right. Now. Let's get the bottom eyelid. Let's draw it in. Not a big opening. Pretty small opening, right? Yeah, she's kind of naughty looking as well. Or at least she looks like she just found out that Santa was a little naughtier than she thought he was. You know. So Santa's keeping track of everyone, but who's keeping track of Santa? Well, based on these eyes, I think it's Mrs. Claus. And from what I know of marriage, probably is Mrs. Claus. All right. So this is it. We're coming in here, putting a line in at this bottom lid. It's really just the bottom of this almond, if you will. And it really is like the shape of a little almond. It's almost that simple. Okay. Okay, see that, how we open that eye up? We came on the inside. I'll show you again what that looks like. So below this upper line that we made first, and above this line, in between these little lines, we're actually carving that almond kind of in. Like so. And look how much he's moving. No wonder he's falling over. Okay. Cool. See what we got there? Her eyes are open. And, well, she's present all right. And she is present, and she is definitely, she's ready to find out what the heck Santa did. What did you do this time, Santa? This poor woman. This poor woman. It's just, look at her. And she's beautiful, but she's not happy. She's not happy. I don't know, but you know, she's pretty. Shouldn't flirt with Mrs. Claus. I'm a married man. Okay, setting her down. Gonna take a touch of sandpaper on her face. All right. I know this is controversial. You don't have to do this at home. We could clean her up if we had another half hour without it. But let's say we just take a tiny bit of sandpaper. Okay. This is 120 grit. This is pretty aggressive. You could do a lot of damage with this, so you want to pay attention to what you're doing. And just kind of take it and go over her face. You could take 220 even if you're kind of afraid of the 120. This is 220, I believe. No, this is actually 320. Let's get something finer. Okay, let's ease into this a little bit. Let's go with 320. This is just 3M sandpaper, just kind of your basic sandpaper. And we're just going to come in here really gently. Sand. I know, crime of all crimes. The CCA probably wouldn't have me now, would they? Because I'm a sander. I'm just a cheater. Now, we could come in with a knife and again, just get rid of all these little hard edges. But sometimes it's kind of nice just to cheat and grab a little sandpaper. See? Softening her up a little bit. It's almost like a serum that kind of removes the bumps from her skin. And I'm just kind of following the contours. I'm using the tip of the sandpaper folded up so it has a little more rigidity. It doesn't fall apart on me. And yeah, I'm just kind of getting her cuter. Just smoothing her skin out, because maybe she's got some, I don't know what's going on, but some angularity. And you can go with a 220 here. This is, granted, this is pretty fine. I don't want to remove all the cut marks altogether. I just want to smooth some of them out a little bit. So she's not looking quite as aggressive. Or aggressive as, I don't know. You know what I mean, right? We're on the same page here, aren't we? Old Mrs. Claus is, we want her to look cute with her hubby. Oh. Come on. You can thin her lips up just a little bit. They're a little thick. A little bit less pursed, because I don't think Santa's wife is going to have those lips, those big lips. She's getting older, right? Women that get older, their lips kind of get a little bit thinner. So I just saw it, and at once I realized those are unrealistic lips. Okay. Those are Santa's fantasy lips. We don't want that. We want the real deal. We don't want these. That was a weird statement. I take it back. Santa's very happy with Krista. He's not dreaming of anyone else's lives. Okay. Little nostril flare. Keep them kind of small and dainty. Just like her. Okay, going in with the circle. And like so. You want to make sure the tip of your knife is nice and sharp for this. If it's not, this is going to be a lot more work. It's worth stopping to polish your tool if it's not sharp. It really is. Okay. Let me turn her lips up just a little bit. I got an idea. We'll prop him up a little bit. Oh! There we go. Okay. I might just take a little bit from in between her nose and her cheek, and kind of the bottom of her cheek, this little area in here, a little scoop cut. Okay, I don't want her nose to be super thick, so I'm just coming right behind her, the ball of her nose. Here's what it is from the side view. Right in there, see that? And I'm coming in and I'm just kind of cleaning that up with a little scoopy scoop. Notice my wrist turning. All right, there we go. Take a little bit more out of the bottom of her eyelid. Thin it out. I'm just kind of thinning the eyelid a little bit, like so. Cleaning up her brow. Coming in on both sides, just kind of taking the knife and smoothing out the brow ridge. Okay, I can go all day. I got to stop myself. All right, let's do the pupil and the iris. Colored part of the eye is the big part. That's the iris. All right, so kind of make that big. Kind of a scoop again. You could use a little gouge if you've got fancy tools. You could use the gouge for this. But you don't have to have a gouge. You just have to have a little bit of patience and practice those scoop cuts on a scrap. Don't practice on her if this is your first carving. Yep. So you nicked a little bit of the lower lid. That's okay. Calm, calm, deep breaths. Just open that eye up a little bit more and hide it. There's a way to fix everything, guys. There's a way to fix everything. Half of the battle is just not freaking out when something bad happens, because it will happen. Something bad's going to happen on your carving. It will. Guarantee it. No doubt. Cool. All right, now she's got a little bit of a gaze. She's looking out. Trouble is with these big knives, it's easy to do what I just did and just bump stuff like that. I accidentally bumped the wrong part of her face. I clean up the inside corner of her eye. Get that a little bit more hollow. Like that. Okay. And then I'll come in the center of that little divot that I created. Give it a little wiggle for the pupil, the dark part of the eye. Okay, see how it kind of makes her look like she's looking off now? Looking off over yonder. Okay, and again, little sandpaper touch-up. Nothing crazy. Just a tiny bit. Hey, and you might think the sandpaper is a mistake. It's really, really not necessary. You know, don't even bother with it if you've got something against the sandpaper, you're not feeling it. It's really not necessary. I really mean that. But look, it does kind of soften her up a little, make her look a little more feminine. Yeah, she looks a little cuter, I think. Come under the nostrils, seeing that out. Under the mouth. Yep, and she's got a, you know, she's Mrs. Claus. She's got a pretty strong jaw. In fact, we might round that out a little bit more. Take a little bit of that jaw out once again. You know, so what we learn from making cuts is what needs to happen. Just gonna take a little bit out of her whole jaw, about 1/8 inches or so. Just soften it after I remove those big bulk flat cuts, because you don't want to leave it flat. Okay. How about a frame here? Let's get rid of the sandpaper for now. Okay. Part of it is we're just kind of getting this squareness out of it. You know, we really don't want it to be square. Much better, much better. Take a little bit more out of her nose bridge. Like so. Because that profile, we want it to look cute, and that's cute. If we take that down, the cutesier, I guess. Let's see. I'm just taking a little bit more out of the bridge of her nose. Okay. You notice this one's a little bit more of a dance than it is just a smooth walk through. That's okay. Okay. All right. That looks a little better to me. I don't know about you. I'm going to soften the lip a little, make it less of a ridge. Cool. All right. Now let's deal with this hat, and then we'll get her on her way. I just want to take the hard edges off, right? We talk about that all the time, and be a little rough with it. Give her a little texture on this part of the hat, because this part of the hat is crumply. So we're just going to take little chunks out of it. And it's okay if it's even a little furry, fuzzy. You leave little stragglers behind. I don't mind that, to be honest. Just a little bit of that, at least, you know. Okay. Lost a little bit of that hat on her, so I'm going to take a little bit of this out, like so. Take a little bit more out of it. You could even thin the bonnet up a little bit, that little brim. It's more delicate than Mr. Claus's. Mrs. Claus is like a little bit less going on here. In some ways, it's a lot more going on, actually, this zigzag thing. Okay. Okay. And just break up those edges. All right. I'm going fast here. You don't have to go this fast. Just creating texture and a little depth. Okay, see, I'm just kind of roughing that up a little. Starting to look a little bit like a kind of frilly border. That's what we're after. So just keep going with that. Those little grooves. So I'm kind of going back and forth, cutting these little indentations, and I'm not afraid to go the opposite direction here and there a little bit, get a little texture on there, just like so. All right. Alright. Wow, guys. We're finally nearing the end here for Mrs. Claus. And I'm proud to say she's shaping up quite nicely. Sure, she's a little simple. She's a little rough around the edges. But man, for a beginner little female face, it's good practice. It's good practice for other types of carvings too, really. You can apply what you learned here making this little lady to a lot of other little pieces. Okay. No, man, a lot of you are going to be really upset that I sanded this. I understand. I understand. Maybe we'll do one day without sandpaper, and then you'll be okay with it. Okay. But that's the way. I'm not going to sand anything else, don't worry. But, alright. Now I'm going to seal her up. Maybe just do a couple little things to clean her. Add a couple little grooves to the hair. And then I'll come back on. I'm not going to bore you with all the little refining things, but it's mostly where it needs to be. Pretty much there. And yeah, I'll get back at you. I'm going to seal this with a anything like a water-based clear will work, an oil. That as long as it's dried up. So I'm going to go with a quick drying thing. I'm going to go with shellac. So be right back. Okay, one last thing I wanted to bring up before I kind of get on to painting. I thought of this while I was about to get to the paint. You can see here I started carving away a little bit more at her. Well, really I just wanted to show you that I came up in this area between the nose and her eyes, and I took this out a little bit more. She was looking a little kind of meaty in there, like a little heavy thickness in there. So I wanted to just kind of come in here and notice these little scoop cuts I'm doing to take out of there. And the other thing was I came above her eye and I kind of exposed her eyelids a little bit. So I just came above that first, remember the first line we carved for the eyelid? We came across like so, boop, that first line. Then we cut everything down beneath it, right? Well, that line, I want to just come above it, I mean just like almost a millimeter or so, just a tiny little bit. A little stop cut just above it. And this is probably an advanced step for those of you who are really adventurous and want to try something. You could leave the eyes hooded the way that they were before, but I'm exposing them, which means I'm taking that line that I carved and then removing a little bit of material from below it to make that little eyelid show underneath that hood. And that's what we call an exposed eyelid, where you can see more of the eyelid. And the reason I'm doing that is because I think it'll help distinguish her eyes a little bit better, kind of show off her pretty eyes a little bit more, which is a good thing. We like that. All right. And then, you know, per usual, I'm going to take a tiny little bit of the wood finish, seal her up, and then conclude with a little touch-up. Really simple paint job, nothing too crazy. Okay. All right. Get in there with that knife. And maybe I'll just accentuate these nostril flares a tiny bit more. Like so. Okay, get those a little bit sharper. She's older, it's going to be a little deeper. In conclusion, one little thing you see in an older woman are these marionette lines, these little lines that come off the sides. I'm going to carve those in. A little cut out of the side of her mouth there to accentuate that little line. Another scoop cut, if you will. And these lines that come off of the side of her face are going to make her look a little bit older, which is ultimately what we want, because you know, while she's taking good care of her skin, she is, I don't know, at least a couple grand, a couple thousand years old. So, right? Because, I mean, I don't know, maybe a few hundred years old. How long has Santa been around? Gosh, I have no idea. I've been through this before. I just don't know. I just don't know how long Santa's been around, let alone his wife. Okay, just a little touch-up, and then we'll apply our finish. Oh, boy. I keep coming up with these new things to say right as we're supposed to finish up. But one last little thing before I force myself to stop. The lower lid tends to tuck under the upper lid. So I'm going to continue this upper lid over, just lightly pressing here, over down into the side of the eye. And then I'm going to take a little bit out of that lower lid. See what I'm doing there? So that way this upper lid sits on top of it. Same thing over here. Okay, extend that upper lid over, and then tuck that up in there. You can tell it's getting a little choppy in here, but it's probably because my tool is, excuse me, a little dull. So that's okay. We're at the end anyway. We can sharpen them up when we're done. I went in there. I exposed that upper eyelid a little. Now I'm taking that upper eyelid and extending it out, tucking that lower lid under it. Just a little bit of sanding. And it's okay if this one takes you a couple of tries, really. I mean, this is not an easy one. It really isn't. And in conclusion, we're just going to give her some really, really simple eyebrows. I'm actually going to scratch them in. Now, there's a whole different technique that I use when I'm doing eyebrows on like a realistic carving. I would never normally scratch them in, but because we're just trying to keep this simple, using the knife, and I'm kind of pressing and kind of wiggling to get that little groove to stand up on end. Does that make sense? So I want almost to flake a little bit, just to show off the texture of her eyebrows, just like that, right? And we'll just keep working them till they're about right. And you could draw them on first. You know, you don't want to make them too thick on her. She's a lady. You can always carve some of it off as well, because we have a little wiggle room here. A little more wiggle room than most people think. Okay. Like that. Just a little bit of those eyebrows come off. Get that paper on there. And we've got a little texture for her eyebrow, which is good, because when we paint it, it'll look a little bit less flat. Don't sand the eyebrows off now. You hear? Okay, pretty good, pretty good. that philtrum back in there. Okay. Pretty good, pretty good. He's gonna fall. I'm setting him down. Actually, what if I take his screw out? Just set him down like that. Okay. Got a little bit of our finish. Just a tiny bit left. Just gonna cover him. Her, sorry. Excuse me. You can wear a glove when you're doing this, and a lot of times I do. In fact, I'm gonna grab something to hold him. Her. Excuse me. Sorry, lady. Hold her with. Just even a paper towel will work. I like to have a bunch of paper towels nearby when I'm working on this sort of finishing thing. Okay. And don't let that paper towel dry on there. Get the back side of her. Alright. I'm just going to let that dry in front of the fireplace for about 30 minutes or so. And I'll come back in and we'll get to painting. Alright, so now that she's pretty much dry, she's a couple shades darker, which is it's okay, it's to be expected. You can kind of brush her off if you want to, in case she got a little dust on her. And say today I'm going to start with the hat, and using kind of a burnt kind of red, almost the kind of rust red that I used on Santa's hat. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're using the same fabrics, and I just got a little white paint on myself, so excuse me while I wipe it off. Looks like my brush handle rolled in some white. Anyway, taking that rusty red, and this is an oil paint, and so it will have a bit of a tinge of kind of earthiness to it, which I personally really like. I like that kind of rust red. But, you know, again, I'm not a huge fan of the candy kind of bright, fake-looking colors. I like the kind of earthy tones. So I've got, I believe it's an oxide red. And I'm going a little heavy on this. I'm going to thin it out a little bit. I just want it to be a little bit lighter. I want to be able to see the grain through it. Try not to bump the edge of this kind of design that we made, her piping. Okay. If you do, not the end of the world. You can always fix it, but just a little of that, a little of this. And I'm going to thin this out, pour myself a little more mineral spirits. And thin it down just a little bit more. I'm going to take it and turn it upside down just so it doesn't drip onto her hat, and just thin it out a tiny bit, okay? And again, try to avoid bumping the piping, but if you do, not the end of the world. And then I'm going to take a little paper towel and just really gently hit the tops of it. And what I'm doing here is kind of wiping off the high points on purpose, because I like that it shows the contrast of the high and lows. And if you really want to get crazy with it, you can take a little thinner on your towel, dip it in a little thinner, really gently just kind of go over it. Okay, now try to avoid getting it everywhere. Don't do as I do. You can take a little thinner and wipe it off as well if you have the ability. And just wipe your fingers off. Try not to get that red paint everywhere, because once that mixes with the white, it will be a little bit of an issue. So keep it light, Okay. Alright, so now I'm taking a little bit of white paint, a separate brush just to keep things clean. And I'm going to do a couple of things with it. I'm going to do the piping first. Okay, so I'm just touching it for now. Need a little bit more pigment in there. It's a little bit too thin. And I can tell that it's too thin because it's not quite showing up enough and it's leaking. It's leaching, I mean, into the other part. So this is better. There we go. Beautiful. And we can do the same thing that we did with the hat and brush off the excess. But first I'm going to do the hair. I'm going to do her hair. She's going to have some kind of white hair because she's older, you know, she's up there. So we're going to give her some white hair. And man, I'm a big fan of when the ladies, you know, as they get older, they just keep the gray. I think that's a great look. No pun intended. The gray, the white, especially when the hair goes white. That is so cool to me. I can't wait for my wife's hair to go gray. I seriously mean it. Maybe it's just the platinum fab that's, you know, got me thinking that'll look so cool. And I'm kind of excited to get a little bit grayer as well. I say it now, but watch when it comes, I'll miss my hair. Okay, so all this is getting a thin white wash on it. And, you know, 'cause she's getting up there. She's got that nice white hair. So I'm just working it in. Again, it's thinned considerably. You want to be able to see the pigment, but you also really want to be able to see the wood through it, coming through it. You don't want this to look like a cheap holiday ornament that you got, you know, on clearance at Walmart. You want this to look like a classy, timeless, kind of antique, old world kind of a carving, right? That's what we're going for, at least. I don't know if we're achieving it, but I think she's looking pretty cute. Pretty good. Yeah, I'm happy with her. I'm pretty happy with her. She's kind of a grumpy old lady, but that's okay. I'm going to do a touch of paint on her eyebrows. Just seriously a light touch. And you could go with darker on this. You want to be careful not to go too heavy. If you go too heavy, she's going to start to look masculine again. So I'll take the excess off. Okay, just a light touch. All right. And now I'm going to take my paper towel and just kind of go over, really lightly go over the white. Okay, so I don't want it to be, I really don't want her to have too much of a really stark white going on. Just almost like a touch, just a tinge of white. Let's move our, woo, it's loud, our chair. Okay. Oh, I almost grabbed the wrong color. Okay, and then I'm going to go in with a little bit more of an intense pigmentation on the white. So slightly more intensity there. Okay, and I'm just going to highlight a few little parts of her hair. What we're doing here is just creating a little depth, you know, some curls. And these are just kind of fun little goofy carvings. They don't have to be perfect. I'm not looking for realism. I don't need to know exactly what Mrs. Claus looked like in real life. Right? We're just having fun. So keep the pressure low on yourself for these sort of things. I did on this, you know, it doesn't have to look perfect. If this was one of my carvings, you know, for the school or for something else, I'd spend a lot more time refining it and going into depth. But this is just a super simple little ornament. It's kind of fun. And again, it kind of seems counterintuitive, but just a little dab to take the really intense pigmentation out. be careful with your paper towel that you're not bumping up against some paint, getting it on the face. So I try to find a new spot. Okay. Let that dry. And that's a fun little carve. Nothing wrong with that at all. And the best part is that Santa has his little helper mate now. Little Santa and little Miss Claus, Mrs. Claus. What do you guys think, huh? Having a good day? Good. See you in the next one, guys. Thanks for watching. And if you've made it this far, please click the link in the description below and subscribe to the channel. And also, check out the online carving school. There's a lot there, a lot more carving videos that explain exactly about the female anatomy in a lot more depth, with a lot more realism. Here's a work in progress that shows you some of the possibilities. Anyway, check that out if you're interested, and appreciate the support.